Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin. And if you love this episode even a fraction as much as I do, then you're going to be wowed by what Kimberly Meredith has to tell us. She talks about her ability to tune into the soul frequency of people through the blinking of her eyes. She has a wide range of psychic gifts, with her healing gifts being her favorite among them. Wait until you hear about the miraculous healing she's recently had with a baby boy via Zoom. Kimberly Meredith is a world-renowned medical intuitive, healer, and best-selling author of Awakening to the Fifth Dimension. After 2 near-death experiences, she received extraordinary healing gifts from the Holy Spirit and now channels divine messages through unique eye-blinking codes. Kimberly's abilities have been scientifically validated by respected institutions like IONS and the Sheely Soren Wellness Institute. She hosts the medical intuitive Miracle Show on Body Mind Spirit FM, streaming worldwide. A sought-after speaker, she's appeared at major expos and on outlets like ABC, CBS, and Coast to Coast AM. Through her work, Kimberly brings comfort and healing messages from the other side to people and even animals around the globe. Before we dive into today's episode, I invite you to explore all the amazing resources waiting for you at karagoodwin.com. From my book, Your Authentic Awakening, to powerful free meditations, a Learn to Meditate course, and even personalized guided meditations. There's something there to support you no matter where you are on your spiritual path. You can also sign up for my upcoming summits and workshops to connect more deeply with like-minded souls and expand your consciousness. These offerings are designed to nurture your evolution, and your support helps me to continue sharing this work, covering the many costs behind producing and delivering this content to you. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Your support makes a big difference. And now, enjoy this episode. Welcome, Kimberly. I have really been looking forward to this interview. I'm so excited to have you here. Thanks so much for coming on Soul Elevation.
Thank you for having me.
And you have such a fascinating story. You're a renowned medical intuitive and healer. How did you discover or develop your gifts? Let's start with that.
I had 2 near-death experiences about 10 years ago. And after that, my guides started coming through. I was born with abilities as a baby, and I had communication through my eyes. They would blink when I was really little. And I didn't really know what that was. They were just blinking. And my intuitive gifts were really prominent when I was really little. And I pushed them away because certain family members didn't like what I was doing when I was little. And after the 2 near death experiences, they fully started to emerge. And I couldn't stop the blinking that was happening, which is how I communicate with spirit. And the near death experiences that I had were life threatening. I coded for over 4.5 minutes.
Wow.
And left me with a lot of physical injuries. I was hit by a car on foot. And when I crossed over, came back, I was left with some pretty significant situation where I was in a wheelchair for 2 years. And
Wow.
so in that 2-year time, I started experiencing the blinking came back. And I was pretty shocked because I was like, oh my God, I remember when I was little, so just imagine a span full of your life not doing any of that and being in a really third dimensional world where I was not doing any kind of paranormal spiritual things. I was pretty white collar. And all of a sudden, as I'm recuperating in a wheelchair, I start having these different coded blinks coming in and hearing messages in my left ear. I hear messages from spirit. So it was a big, big shift and quite profound shift. I was also living with my fiance. We were going to get married, and he's not spiritual at all. And he was just like, what is going on? And we both were like, I said, well, I'm hearing messages and my eyes are blinking when I was little. And he was just like, what are you talking about? And my voice started to change also. I was becoming a trance channeler. All this was happening. But these words I didn't understand. I just was starting to just become this. And slowly but surely, I started healing myself. I wanted to go off all the medications. I didn't want to, I was just hearing messages that you can heal yourself. So I started activating my palms, never knew about Reiki, never knew any of these things. Didn't even know what a near death experience was, even though I had had two of them. Don't
Wow.
know the language, but I've
Right.
been going through it. Yeah. And they wanted to do some pretty extensive surgeries on me. And I just didn't want to do, I had a couple, but I didn't want to do the elaborate ones. I wanted to do with my neck because I couldn't hold my neck up. But my girlfriend, who was a nurse at the time, because I was in nursing, came over and said, "Let me do Reiki on you." And I said, "What's Reiki?" So she explained, and we started doing the healing on my neck with her Reiki, and I started to feel better. And I was telling her I was hearing messages from spirit, and my eyes were blinking again. And she thought that was, she told me, "You're a channel," because she knew more about this than me. And I was like, "I am?" And so we started doing praying and healing, and I started getting better. And it was really miraculous because in the matter after that started happening, more frequencies and energies of Holy Spirit and the angels started coming in, and rapidly it was starting to speed up. And some friends were coming over, and I started getting more messages, and that's where the medical intuitive stuff started coming in. I started scanning over my friends that were coming by, and I'd hear them say they have a hernia or they have a torn knee. And I say, "Did you have a torn knee there?" And this is just me still in my pajamas, sitting on the couch, getting not even really doing much, just hearing these messages. And they'd say, "Yeah, I did have a hernia there. Yeah, I did have my appendix out." And I would just hear messages, "Appendix is out," or "You need a root canal." And I would just hear these messages. So at this time, my fiance was getting really freaked out. And he said, "I don't like this. You need to stop doing this. This is not who I was with." And so he wanted to move out and be over with the relationship. And it reminded me when I was little and where I
Oh,
was told
yeah.
not to do my gifts. And he said, "You're blinking and you're speaking differently." And I said, "I heard a voice saying, 'This is who you are, and you can't stop at this time. You need to keep moving forward and be who you really are.'" And I said, "I can't stop this. This is who I am." And he said, "I'll give you a week or two. And if you don't stop, I'm moving out." And I remember Spirit just saying, "You'll be okay." And he kept saying, "You're not going to survive. You can't make it on your own." So he ended up moving out. And about a few weeks after he moved out, I was discovered in my apartment here by some people that were very known in the community of the spirit world, producers that wrote What's the Bleep and The Secret. And I was flown to Virginia to do an event. And the lady on the phone said to me, "You channel Edgar Casey." And I said, "Who's Edgar Casey?" And she said, "He was one of the most documented psychics that do medical intuitive readings." And I said, "How do you know that?" She says, "Well, you've had a lot of people come through your home and you're getting known. And you had found cancer in a person we know, and she didn't know she had it, and you found it." She says, "Kimberly, you're a medical intuitive." And I said, "What's a medical intuitive?" So I didn't really know what was going on in the beginning of the first 3.5 years of this transpiring. And then as I kept going with it and flowing with it, I became to understand I am a trance channel that's always channeling. And I don't turn it, it doesn't turn off. Where Edgar Casey would put himself to sleep and channel, I'm a waking trance channel. And it just went on from there that I became also a channeler that speaks to the afterlife. So it went from medical intuitive to also I do communicate with the other side.
Wow, what an amazing story. So, who or what do you channel? Does it depend on who you're interacting with, or is it always your guides? Is it always the same beings?
I'm pretty versatile. Jane Roberts. I'm a trance channel. I'm a very deep trance channeler. So I love helping people. First and foremost, if I am working with somebody, I do teach classes too. So when I'm doing a session with somebody, I always help them reach the afterlife with a family member that wants to come in and help. So I do that. I also always I can't help it but do a reading on their health. So the health
Mm.
always does come in, but I do a lot of life coaching and people need help getting into their wanting to speak to their family members. So I do that.
Mhm.
But it's like a family affair with me because the family always wants to talk about the health. And then also my guides are on a mission to help raise consciousness. So we always want to do that too in our sessions. And also, I hope I'm answering this correctly. They also my guides, I have many guides. So one of my main guides is Edgar Casey. And then I work with the Virgin Mary. Mary's been with me from the beginning because I'm also a healer. So when I'm out in public doing my events, I also, when I bring in Casey and I bring in Mary and Jesus, we like to lay hands and heal. So I'm known to be a healer where I do love to do, not Kimberly, they like to come in and show the fifth dimensional healings. And that's what I got discovered at expos in various places and been documented as a healer. So
Mm.
it's not me, it's them coming in and showing the healing where they've dissolved multiple energies off people's bodies and illnesses.
Wow. It's fascinating that you work with Edgar Casey. He's one of those, I don't know if you can relate to this, but just in what you've shared, I think you can, but people will just come into my life out of the blue where he's been around since he's passed away a long time ago, but what, 100 years his work has been around. And suddenly about this time last year, within the last year, I was like, I'm going to listen to his autobiography because he just kept coming up enough and enough and enough. But it was like he was not there in my world. And then all of a sudden he was there and everybody was talking about him all the time. And I listened to his autobiography and it was really activating for me. Like I would be driving or I would be walking and I would be like, it was almost like I could perceive reality shifting in a certain way. And what I find fascinating about it is it's the story of his life, not and I say autobiography. It wasn't did I say autobiography? It was his biography. He didn't write it and he didn't read it. Obviously, it wasn't his recorded voice. So I was like, wow, this is interesting that it's such a powerful energy that this is holding, even though it's not his words and it's not his voice. But there were so many times where I was like, just blown away by how energetically impactful his story was to me. And it was just a really funny example of like, it's almost like he didn't exist. And then all of a sudden he just showed up, and I was like, oh, where has he been this whole time? know? I don't
Exactly.
know if you can relate. Do you ever have things that show up like that where it's like, how has this not been in my field? And then all of a sudden it's everywhere.
I think a lot of signs and symbols come in, and I think now more progressively, um, things are showing up faster because I live more in a fifth dimensional state of consciousness. So especially with my hands-on healing. Many
Mhm.
of the people from the afterlife want to come in now and help us heal faster in a higher dimensional frequency. So, of course, Casey would pick someone to come in and do his work. And of course, when I do the laying on hands healing, he wasn't a healer, he was a psychic. So I'm a mixture of a psychic and a healer. So
Mhm.
that's why Dr. Sheely had done the forward to my book, and I did a lot of science institutes have researched my work because I'm not just the psychic medium, I'm also a laying on hands healer. And the healing work that I've done in the last 10 years has been documented over and over again. So they don't just want to use me as a medium and a psychic, they like to use me as a healer.
Yes, absolutely. It's so powerful.
And I want other people to learn how to do it too.
And you teach people?
I have started doing some teaching, not as progressive as I want to do yet because I got
Mhm.
held back with COVID. But I
Oh, yeah.
did start doing some teaching. The guides direct me where to go to do the teaching. I did some
Mhm.
at Omega Institute.
Oh,
Um,
I love Omega.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
really cool. But I was doing some of the teaching right before COVID hit, and then we had to stop.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're about
Well,
to start again. Yeah.
yeah. I love what you've talked about with the blinking. Can you explain a little bit more of what is the blinking? How do you interpret what's happening? And is it that you're communicating to others through your blinking or you're communicating with spirit? Tell us more about that.
Well, your eyes are the window to your soul. And being a psychic and also connected to the Holy Spirit, connected to God and the omnipresent, I can pretty much read anybody at any time, who they really are, what their soul frequency is. My first book is called Awakening to the Fifth Dimension. And that book came from the laying on hands, healing. And so, leading up to your question and answer, the eyes are who I am as far as a psychic medium and a healer, and my direction of how we can all gain a higher intuitive frequency. So my ability to be a psychic medium is through my eye blinking. And so I get a read on a person within a few minutes of who they are. So the discernment is through the eyes. And so I get a frequency code pattern of the blinking through who a person is within a few minutes. I get a frequency of numbers. So they have upgraded me since I was a baby. It came out full blown after the NDEs. So my next book is on frequencies and patterns of numbers. That's just the gift that I have, is through my codes of my blinking eyes and how I always was born this way, came into the world. So everybody that comes in the world has a gift. I truly believe that you're blessed with an amazing amount of gifts. Everyone has a gift. They can full blown open up when we're willing to let go of fear, when we step aside the fear. So this is just my gift. So Billie Eilish is an amazing singer. Everybody has, I see little babies come in and they can play piano. So I just have my gifts are through the eye blinking and the codes. I communicate with ETs. I communicate with the Holy Spirit. They just come through the blinking eyes, and they do it through codes.
That is fascinating. So, if we were able to see from your perception and the blinking just happens automatically, but what is it that you are seeing? So, are you seeing numbers? Are you hearing numbers?
Yeah. So if you had me read Elon Musk, you had me read political figures, and I can't disclose that right here, but I would know who they truly are. I know who their soul frequency is. I know what's going on. I do missing kids. I do missing animals through the code blinking. If I'm going to do a read on someone's health, that's different. I don't do the code blinking with that, but I get messages from the afterlife. So when I do the code blinking, those are different. I do soul frequency readings on couples. Like someone will say, "Can you do a soul frequency reading on me and my husband?" That's more of the code blinkings.
Wow. So, you're through the blinking, you're receiving codes rather than transmitting,
I
or
do
is it both?
I do remote viewing too. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That is so cool. And I mean, it makes me think of, like, the light, like, how you're interpreting and reading light because you're opening and closing and light and dark and, I don't know, that's what
Yeah.
comes into my mind with it.
I feel like everybody has a special way of getting intuitive messages, but I feel like for me, the energy, and I don't know if you believe in God, but the energy, the omnipresent God, Holy Spirit, I've had encounters because of crossing over and coming back with the full blown awakening through my third eye, which was just beautiful. And the more that I get these beautiful awakenings that happen, and more of my clients that get these awakenings, they get their intuitive abilities. And I teach mediumship classes and psychic intuitive classes. The more they keep working and expanding their intuitive abilities, they may get hits in different ways where they're hearing messages, connecting to angels and guides. And the more that you know who your angels and guides are, also, the more they'll keep working with you.
Mm. So, I think you've had a recent development in your gifts or a recent change, is that right? In your gifts and your abilities?
Yeah, I feel that they're just wanting to teach people more. Like I'm doing more teachings, and
Mhm.
the soul frequency readings are what I'm doing now more, which is the rapid numbers for people, which is a pathway of frequency numbers that I'm doing, which is really great. And they're doing them up to 10 years only. So they'll give people like a path of numbers up to 10 years. So, where those numbers are specifically your numbers. They're working with the Elohim. So, it's a team of angels, and the Elohim is another word for supreme God.
Mm.
God.
Mhm.
So, like for instance, they know exactly the number that you came into the world with. So sometimes people don't like, I don't know if you ever hear of people say, I don't know why I'm here. Like
Mhm.
I do this job, but I don't feel that's really my purpose. So
Mhm.
people will come to me and say, what are my soul frequency numbers? So once they go in and start blinking those numbers, I'll scribble them down on the paper and they'll start reading the messages for those codes that they
Hmm.
just gave. The person will say, oh my God, that is what I was interested in doing. That is my path. So sometimes they'll start the first number you came in and they'll do like maybe 7 numbers leading up to 2035. And the middle numbers will be where their life is expected to move into. That's like the future. And the first few numbers, the person will say, that's how I really felt when I came into the world. And I don't know enough, I don't know anything about the person. I just give what the Elohim is giving me for the person. Greg Braden has spoke about sort of something like this, that these code numbers would come in, and even Edgar Casey spoke about something about this. I started channeling this about right after COVID happened. The guides were coming in and saying there's going to be a path of numbers that people are going to exist in, and the world will exist in these numbers. And everything has a frequency, everything has a path of numbers. Even your home does, everything has a frequency within these codes. So these soul frequency numbers are really cool because they make your life, I say, more simple.
Hmm. So is it related to numerology in terms of like you get a code and then to be able to understand how that code relates to something besides a number?
It's
Does
non,
that make sense?
yeah, it does would make sense about numerology and astrology, but it's not coming from numerology. It's coming
Mhm.
from, in the book, I'm writing the book right now. It's coming from the Elohim,
Mhm.
the supreme God, and giving you your own set of path of numbers. When you came in, you had these set numbers going up only to 2035. So like right now in the world, there's a lot of things going up and down. So I
Mhm.
haven't done the universals path of numbers, but they're only giving me to 2035. They stop at that year. I get goosebumps that something could be big change in 2035 happening for us. And it's
Wow.
boom, like they won't give me past that number 2035 for people.
Okay. So I guess I'm thinking though, if somebody had a reading with you and then you say, here are your numbers,
Yes.
how they then relate that to life. You know what I mean? So if you were to say, oh, 5, or yeah, this you were 5, number 5 for I don't know if maybe it's like several numbers, but at this
So I
from
give
these years you were this number and then you moved to this number. But how does that equate to something that they can relate to?
because the book is being written right now, what I do, I just went on coast to coast when we did these numbers too. We go on all the numbers. They do sessions with me, and each number has a message for each number for that person so they know exactly what's going on.
Oh, okay. So then there's like a glossary almost of or there will be in the book.
I do the no, right now when I do the soul frequency readings, I give
Mhm.
them an interpretation of what is going on with their number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's very, they really understand what is going on with their life. And if they have problems with their partners or work or all of that, it's explained what is going on with
Mhm.
each individual soul frequency number.
Right. Okay. So it's interesting what you say about 2035. Have your guides given you much insight into where we're headed? These times are just
Well,
so potent.
yeah, you're right. Right now, this next year is going to be what we're doing. And then probably the next following year, it probably won't get better to 2027,
Okay.
a little bit. But it's all how we look at things and how we move forward. And because of how I am, I'm in service.
Mhm.
The more we're in service, the more helpful we are, the more kind we are. We generate uplifting energy to helping others. It can, how we believe in my book I have out right now, Awakening to the Fifth Dimension, we believe in living in a fifth dimensional vibration and moving out of the third dimension.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Well, do you want to share a little bit about what you experienced in one or both of your NDEs? People love to get a glimpse into what awaits on the other side. And is there anything that comes to mind that you'd like to share with what you've experienced?
When I experienced my near death experience, I, like most people experience, very common, I was out of my complete body. And I think I had said, like this big, huge ball of light pressed down, not only in my eyes, but on my chest. And it was my experience, because it was so horrific. I lost a lot of functioning in my whole body.
Mm.
And it was very, very fast for me when I went to the other side, because it was like that. And
Mm.
I had experienced a very sharp and fast light that went through my eyes, which eventually brought the blinking back, I feel, and very hard thump on my chest, which was like constricted feeling. And I kept hearing, I wanted to get off of me. I kept saying, I wanted to get off of
Mm.
me. I don't feel like I did see the visions that I did see later on when I told my aunt was a woman that came at me, which was my great grandmother, who was a shaman from Italy, and she was a healer.
Oh,
So
wow.
some of my gifts I do get from my Italian grandmother, great grandmother. And so I had never seen her before, but this was one of the faces I saw when I crossed over. And I would like to say it's Jesus. I saw a face come at me and resembled that. And I just remember feeling very comfortable. I felt very at ease, but I didn't like the energy. I didn't feel comfortable with the pushing down on my chest. It was really very harsh, but it was the Holy Spirit. I know it was the Holy Spirit because the Holy Spirit saved me. I did hear, "You're to stay here." And it was a whisper
Mm.
in my ear. And it was very profound. And I did feel like I was torn between wanting to stay there and here. I felt like it was very comfortable there. And then a pushing down on my chest to say, "You're to stay here." And it was very emotional because I felt, I don't know if other people say this or not, but I do know that I was experiencing the Holy Spirit because my legs were shaking and I was having a lot of seizures. And then I guess I came back. Obviously, I came back. But when I came back, I was a mess. I was really a
Mm.
mess. I was seriously injured. I spent 3 months in the hospital and I had many, many seizures after that. But I was gifted through the Holy Spirit, through going there and coming back. And then I remember that I feel after that, they did many more procedures on me when I was there. So I do know now that I guess it was a blessing, but I did lose my life I had before. And I felt like after that, they were like, they took over. And then they said, "You're going to now do what we want you to do, which is laying on hands, healings, and this work."
Mm. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And do you feel that you potentially had a soul walk in then?
Yeah, probably had
Mhm.
definitely a walk in.
Mhm.
Because after that, even when I was there for so long and trying to get better at the hospital, once I was released, we were driving home with a car. I remember my partner looked at me and he said, "Why are you talking like that?" And I said, "Talking like what?" He goes, "You never had an English accent." And I said,
Oh.
"No." I said, "I don't know what you mean." And he was like, I don't know. It was just everything was, yeah, totally surreal and different. Yeah. So I never said
Wow.
hospital like this. I always had a
Uh-huh.
different, yeah. And so it was like, it's very different. Yeah. And this is
That's
the
so
same
fascinating.
hospital I had worked in.
Really?
Yeah. So a lot of my friends that were on the 10th floor were coming down and seeing me. And they were also noticing I was a little different. So yeah, it definitely was a switch.
Wow. That is so fascinating. Now, when you had that experience and you talk about your great-grandmother, it was your great-grandmother, right?
Yeah. My mom's
And
grandmother. Yeah.
okay. And where in Italy was she from? Do you know?
They were from Genoa and Sicily, so I think she was born in Genoa.
Okay. Um, do you and then you met was that the one kind of representative of your guides? I mean, in addition to Jesus and Mary and the Holy Spirit, but in terms of the guides, like the personal guides, is that the one that you saw? And then are you still working with her?
Yes. Yes, she's still working with me. And also I work with Mary and Jesus and Casey, and I do have other ones, but I love my stepmother. She was from Guadalajara, Mexico, and
Mm.
she is another one of my main guides that works with me.
That is fascinating. Are you familiar with Adam Apollo?
Yes, I just saw him recently at the expo up at New Living Expo.
I was just listening to a talk with him, and he was talking about the impact that his stepmom had because she passed away, and then she has communicated some guidance through him, and that was literally just yesterday. So, I'm like, wow, that's fascinating because in this call, I asked, like, how is your stepmom informing your development since her passing? Because that was when he was a child, but so
We
that's really interesting.
were very close. She always was concerned about me because my upbringing wasn't the greatest. My mom and another parental figure were not that supportive of me and were not that great. And she was really there for me all the time. And even though I wasn't her full daughter, she really was an amazing angel and she passed away young. And several other readers that have read me said, she is one of your main angels.
Mm, wow, that's so beautiful. Well, and you mentioned also some ET contact as well.
Yeah, I do have to. Yes,
Is that Go ahead.
I do. And I've had some encounters with them since I've become a spiritual teacher.
Which I think goes very well with your they do seem to be part of this whole world, but has your experience with them been a little bit more surprising for you than the other guides?
Yeah, the contact I've had with them has been them interested in my abilities a bit. And then they just kind of left me alone after that. But me doing some channeling with them has been very interesting and good. But the ones that have been physically like in contact with me have been more curious about the work that I do, and then they've been fine, just kind of leaving it be.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of where they're from?
Um, I I'm not quite sure. You could ask me, and we'll answer.
Mhm.
But
Right.
they're here right now.
Oh, really? So if I ask, where are they from?
Yeah, you could ask me some places if you want, and I can
Oh.
answer. Yeah, but
Oh,
they're
okay.
here right now.
Really? Wow. So maybe they're from the Pleiades?
Yeah, I do get that. Yeah, that's
Yeah?
where they came from, but they're actually here.
With you right now
Yeah,
as we're talking.
no, not. I mean, they have come here already. They're already here with us, but they have come from Pallades. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then they're like stationed more. in our atmosphere or here grounded on the planet?
Yeah, no, they're among us. Yeah.
Like walking around in human form or in a different dimension?
I don't want to get too into it, but yeah,
Okay.
they are in this dimension. Yeah.
Wow. That is fascinating.
Yeah, they are. You're the first show I've talked about it.
Well, and we don't have to talk about it, but I'm
Fine,
curious
I'm
about
fine saying it. Yeah, but
it.
you're the first interviewer that asked me. But yeah,
Well, you're so expansive and you have so much knowledge at your fingertips that it feels like I'm in a candy store. What else can we talk about?
it's true. They are. And even Deepak Chopra would say if you're a spiritual teacher and you have some sort of interesting ability, they're going to show up. And they're going to show
Mhm.
up in your classrooms. They're going to show up in meetings and they're going to have some sort of contact with you. And they do. They do.
And it's been supportive and loving?
The contact I've had was interesting, let's say. And they are leaving me right now. Yes, it's been fine.
Okay. Okay. Well, can you talk a little bit as well about from your healing perspective
Yeah.
as you work with people, what is that like for you? Do you feel that you are channeling, you're doing hands-on healing? Are you doing virtual healing?
Thank you for asking. I can do the same thing remotely with healing on Zoom, but sometimes people like to come to the office. And it's documented in our book, the Wake the Fifth Dimension book. And I've been doing it since I was really little. I was born with these gifts, but they've upgraded since. And this is just fascinating and remarkable, even though I've been doing it my whole life. But it started really activating the last 10 years since this awakened, where I'm now doing it like my daily job. You know, a tumor this big or whatever you've got going on in your body just can disintegrate like that. And that's just putting my hands on it. And we tested it behind a wall with Alan Steinfeld shooting the video and Norman Shealy running multiple double blind testing on many people. There was a lady that had a tumor this big, and he wrote the forward to my book, but I can do them up to this big as putting my hands on it and doing some chants. It doesn't have to be a certain prayer, it could be any kind of chant, and it dissolving. And so this is called a scalar energy, is what Norm said it was. But for me, I feel it's a activation energy coming through the body of higher source and just a frequency. Now, in the book, we did it through a wall. I was behind a wall doing the energy healing, and it went through and
Wow.
changed the healing. But if you see me ever in person and you touch someone's throat, a nodule, and I lay hands and it's completely gone, then you're a real believer of this frequency energy that we can all tap into. So they say this will rapidly start happening faster and faster the more that you see something and you start tapping into it. And this is something that I do, and I've been doing it for about 10 years. That's how I got discovered at the expos and all these institutes. And when you go to the doctor and you say, this is gone, and they take the x ray or the MRI and they see it's gone, it's miraculous.
Yes.
It's something that we want to keep doing because as the years are going by, it's going to be harder to get into hospitals, harder to get things healed. And, you're waiting a longer time for things to get done. So, this is what Casey, I think, even had a hospital, more holistic hospital. And Norm Shealy had a holistic hospital going. And so they have them in Japan. And so this is something that probably rapidly, I'm getting chills like goosebumps, that
Mhm.
I'm in hopes of will start happening more holistic, maybe in the US.
Mm. Oh, let's hope so.
Yeah.
Wow. That is fascinating just having the research backed with it.
Fifth dimensional healing surgeries, healings and things like that. Because why not try something before you do a really extensive surgery? And even if you do surgeries, you could try doing this first. And then so some of my clients will do I'm very popular with breast. I know breast lumps dissolving fast and healing.
Mhm.
And then if you go in to do get your lumpectomy or whatever, sometimes they'll say, "Wow, it's gone down a lot," or "It's completely gone." Or I just did a little baby the other day that had inoperable cancer, and I scanned him, and I knew where it was, but I also knew where they didn't know where it had spread. And they said the chemo would probably never work. But the mother was a real big into faith healing and into this kind of healing. So I did a session through Zoom. It's the hospital,
Mm.
and really tapped into the Virgin Mary, to the omnipresent. And I did very hard healing, really hard, really. And the baby is so cute, smiling. And I got an email saying the doctor couldn't believe it because it would take many more rounds of chemo and they didn't want to do any more. And the baby's completely healed.
Wow.
And the mother said the tumors completely shrunk with only a few rounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. But here's
Oh
the
my
thing. When I did this frequency numbers on the baby, I'm getting chills right now. They Nobody can tell us who is supposed to be inoperable or who can't have this or that, because the only one that has the destiny of us is the omnipresent. And when I did the code readings, I would know if a person is not going to make it or make it because they tell me. And that baby had the 777. There's 70 times in the Bible, in the Torah, that God is mentioned. And they kept telling me this baby will be healed. It's having a rough start right now, but the baby is going to go on and be a champion and get through this.
wow.
And that's why
That's just
I
fantastic.
wanted to do the praying. Yes.
Mhm. Wow. Well, many times as you've been talking, my crown has just been like as though there is a stream of energy just coming right down through my crown,
Huh.
but, so, like, perceptible and palpable. It's been fantastic. So I just wanted to mention that because when other people are listening to this, sometimes I'll say something like that and people will be like, "Oh my gosh, you said that. I've been feeling that." And, so that's been really palpable.
Thank you. Yeah, I love being a psychic and a medium, but I have to say, if I had either one, I love healing people. I love laying hands and healing people. I love when they are healed.
What a huge gift. That's just beautiful. Well, as we wrap up here, is there anything that you would be disappointed if we didn't talk about? You've got so much that you offer and so many things that so many different directions we could go. So does anything come to mind in terms of what you'd like to share?
You're so sweet. Well, I love being on your show. I love your energy. It's so amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I love doing my medical intuitive readings and healings for people to find preventative when you may not know you have something. So I love doing that. I love doing the scans. Sometimes people may not know they've got something, so I like to get it ahead of time. I love one of my groups that I hold, which is called the Mother Mary Matrix. And that's once a month on Saturdays. And it's free, it's a donation based group, and it's Spanish and English. And we all get together as a collective and we do co healing. So it's a
Oh,
healing group and worshiping the divine feminine. So that's once a month on Saturdays.
oh, beautiful. That's amazing. So how can, if people want to find out more and connect with you, how can they find you?
I'm at thehealingtrilogy.com.
Okay,
Yeah,
wonderful. And are you
yeah.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was wondering if you're on like social, are you on social media and things like that?
Yeah. So I am on Instagram under I spelled it backwards, Meredith Kimberly. So Kimberly Meredith
Okay.
or Meredith Kimberly. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on. You're fascinating and you're so much fun. And thank you so much for all the work that you're doing by embodying the truth of who you really are. It's a gift to have you here.
Thank you. I really appreciate you telling people about my work, especially during these times when maybe people need an alternative to healing. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Soul Elevation. Please take a moment to think about someone in your life who might be uplifted or have their curiosity sparked by this content and send it on to them. Let's keep sharing high frequency, empowering content to reinforce the highest potential for humanity. I also invite you to subscribe to this content. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.